Okay, we've got our document pretty well organized right now. We have our table of contents. We have our headings declared as heading 1s, of course, and that's how they're showing up in the table of contents. And I want to show you something now that's going to cause us to rethink some of what we've been able to do so far. One of the things that would be important in a book, and that's what we're trying to do, is take this document and convert it into some sort of a book that we could find useful for personal reasons. And one of the things that you would expect to find in a book would be things like page numbers, maybe at the bottom of the pages, and maybe some sort of a heading. So like if I clicked up here in the heading area, so this would be the heading area, top of the page, in the margin area, just click in it. And if I were to put Stave 1, Marley's Ghost, which is the name here of Stave 1, as you can see here below. I'm going to close this header now. Then we now have a header, and we could even put in a footer with a page number, but we'll come back to that. So here we have Stave 1, Marley's Ghost. If I scroll to the top of the page, we see that it's there also in the header. I'm going to use Control G to jump to the bookmark for Stave 2. Scroll down to Stave 2, and so here in Stave 2, our bookmark says Stave 1, Marley's Ghost. If I jump to Stave 3, it's going to say the same thing. It's going to say Stave 1, Marley's Ghost, here on the page where we're trying to start Stave 3, the second of the three spirits. Now we could do something very simple, like just rather than put in Stave 1, Marley's Ghost, we just could put in A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. But normally what you would expect in some sort of a publication is that you would expect that the heading or the heading that we have up here at the top in the header, we would expect that this would change every time we come into a new chapter, so that when we come to the page with Stave 3, that the heading up here, the header would say Stave 3 and say the second of the three spirits. So here's the problem. What we did in order to force Stave 3 to come to the top of the page here, you recall that at that time, we just entered page breaks. And I turned on the show hide just now. And with the show hide, you can see that up here at the bottom of Stave 2, right before we have Stave 3 starting on its own page, that we have a page break. Now, here's the problem. We don't really have to worry about this structure that we built in here at all, unless we're wanting to have something change within this document every time we go from, let's say, one section into another section. So moving from Stave 2, which would be up here, down into Stave 3, which would be down here, would be not just the movement of from one page to another, but rather one section to another. And in order to do that, we're not going to be able to be satisfied here with just page breaks. So I mentioned earlier to you, whenever we were putting these page breaks in, there was a place or two where we had like an entire blank page that got inserted. And I told you at that time, don't worry about it, we're going to take care of it later. And so now we're at that point where we're going to have to take care of how we inserted these page breaks. Now, what I'm going to do right now is just click in the heading up here, take out that header, just delete it totally, close on the page header, and you can see if I scroll down to the next page, there is no header there. If I go back to the top of the document, there's no header up here. We just took it out, and so it's gone for the entire document. Now, we have our headings named correctly, and we inserted bookmarks so we can jump to them quickly. That's fine. and we made them heading 1 so that they show up in our table of contents. That's just fine. None of that is a problem. The only thing that is a problem is that we forced each of these bookmarks, the stave 1, stave 2, stave 3, we forced all of those to begin on a separate page by simply using a page break. And that's what we are going to find right now is not acceptable. So what we're going to do, we're going to jump through here, and I'm just going to take out each of these page breaks here, each of them. So I'm just going to click up here before stave 1, and I'm going to delete that page break and take out that extra line there. I'm going to jump down with Control G to stave 2. Close that. And right here, the insertion point is in front of the page break, and I'll just hit the delete key. And I'm going to jump to stave 3. Close that. Click right in front of the page break and press the delete key. Control S to save this as I do my work. Control G to jump to stave 4. And I'm going to click in front of the page break there and delete it. And then I'm going to jump to stave 5 and delete that page break and delete that and close my find and replace, save my document with Control S. And I'm going to jump to the top of the document now. And you can see here that if I update the table of contents, I still get a perfectly valid table of contents. The page numbers have changed because the page locations have changed for all of this. Now what we need to do is we need to insert page breaks that are not just breaking a page with the start of each stave, but that we're actually beginning a new section on each stave. So I'm going to click right here in front of stave 1, and I'm going to come up to Layout on the ribbon. And under Layout, here in the Page Setup group, there is a drop-down for breaks. And notice here that we have two kinds of breaks. We have page breaks and we have section breaks. Under page break, I can insert a page break just like we did before. But under section breaks, I can also insert a page break. They just call it next page. And here it says to insert a section break and start the new section on the next page. Well, let's see what happens when we click that here with our insertion point right in front of stave 1, Marley's Ghost. So I'll click this in 3, 2, 1. Now we see here that we have a new kind of page break up here, but now it's called a section break at the bottom of the table of contents. Now, if I click in the heading area above stave 1, now we see a header that looks totally different. Here on the first page, we have something called header of section 1, and down here we have footer of section 1. Now, just to show you what's going to happen here as we continue entering these kinds of section breaks, one of the things that we would expect in looking at a book would be, I'll close the header for just a moment, we would expect to find the table of contents on its own page. So I'm going to click right here in front of the table of contents, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to insert a section break so that the table of contents will be found on its own page, and then it will be within its own section as well. So I'll click next page, and there we see a section break that's been inserted, the table of contents starting on its own page. I'm going to click in the header area, and now you can see that page 1, which is the title page, it still has footer of section 1 and header of section 1. But now the table of contents is header section 2, and the footer is header section 2. But down here where we had stave 1 Marley's Ghost, it was header section 2, but now it's header section 3. So I'm going to go back to the top, close the ribbon first, go back to the top, and I'm going to do the same thing with the preface, because normally you'll find the preface occurring on its own page. So layout, breaks, a section break, and now we can have just the heading on the title page, and then on the next page we'll have the preface by Charles Dickens. By clicking the header area to open up the headers and footers, I can see that our title page is still header section 1 and footer section 1, and the preface is now header section 2, and down here we have table of contents is now header section 3, and here is stave 1 with header section 4. And remember, it was, when we first started with this was header section 2. So what we're seeing here is that by inserting section breaks, Microsoft Office is keeping track of all of the numbering of all of our headers, which is going to be very important as we move on through this demonstration. And is going to keep track of all the numbers, and all of our sections are going to be named in such a way that we can work with them individually. So what I'm going to do is close this header so I can jump to Control G. I'm going to jump to stave 2. And what we need here in front of stave 2, I'm just going to press the home key to jump to the beginning of that line. And we're going to layout and break and section break here. So now section 2 is down on its own page. Control G, we're going to drop down to stave 3. Go to. We'll close that, and here at stave 3 we're going to enter a section break. And then we'll go to stave 4 and do the same thing. And notice that as we do this, all of our staves we're getting the same kind of result that we did when we just entered a page break, is that all of these staves are beginning on their own page, but now we're going to have some extra features available to us in Word that'll enable us to do a lot of special styling here. So there's stave 4, and the last one would be stave 5. Drop down to stave 5, go to. I'm going to close this. Click here in the heading for stave 5, press the home key to jump to the start of the line, and then break. I'm going to insert a next page break. And when we get to the very end, the last stave is called the end of it. But when I get to the very end of the document, one of the things that we're going to do down here after the document is we're going to insert an index at the end of our book. So there will be one more section that we will add, but we'll do that quite a bit later. So here we are now with our section breaks in each of our staves. And as we come here to the top of stave 5, I'm going to double click up here in the header to open the headers and footers. And you can see that stave 5 is now this is the header for section 8. And we have footers for section 8. And now we're going to be able to go back through this document and do quite a bit of formatting with the document changing sections as it moves from one stave to the other. And we're going to do it in such a way that we could never have done by using a page break alone.